want to return to the tax question and do a follow-up on that, because you each talked about your reticence to increase taxes, but I want to ask you if you have plans or if you have proposals to cut any taxes. That's in holiday, I guess, the first round.
Well, here's the deal. Taxes are not the problem, folks. It's the size of government. Taxes are a symptom of big government. It's kind of like the pain you have in your jaw when you have a toothache. The pain is a symptom of the cavity that you have. Taxes, it takes money to run government. People want more and more government. We've become a state that people want the government to do everything for them. First thing we have to do is use the money we have wisely, be more effective and efficient. And I'm going to tell you, with property appraisals down, every county in this state is going to be suffering. And they're going to find out just how effective and efficient they are. But certainly, we want to get tax burden off the people. And the way you do that is by cutting government. Now, what are you going to cut? That's the next question. But everybody, if you went back to 2007 or 2008, the money that we had in the budget at that time, I think we had probably about all the government we needed in 2007. We'd probably be okay. But I couldn't tell you exactly where we're going to cut, but we got to use the money we got there. Then if there's any way to cut it more, we need to cut it. You're right.
And it sounds like you're talking about cutting spending, or you're talking about cutting taxes too, to defer that.
You got to cut spending before you can cut taxes. Because you can't spend it if you don't tax to get it. I mean, the government doesn't create any money. They don't create it first time. They take money from you, give it to me, or you. We've got to cut back on the spending before we can cut taxes. If you can't cut the spending, you can't cut the taxes, folks. I mean, we can't write bad checks. So you got to cut back service. You got to cut back spending.
Okay.
You got to be more efficient, more effective.
David.
It is a spending concern, not a revenue concern.
Right.
As you look at what's going on, look at Medicaid and Medicare. But in the instance of the state, let's just isolate Medicaid. You should have face-to-face recertifications. You should have to require people that if they're going to draw what your hard-earned taxes have paid for, they ought to have to come in every year and recertify that, by golly, we're eligible. We need it. We cannot take money and give it to people that are not recertified. I think that's one area that you hone in on, and you make generally expense, if you will, you make cuts, because you're going to have to look at that. But as you look at revenue and you look at the expenses that are truly going out, you have to look at cutting expenses. Much as I said earlier, my dad said take 5 or 10% of your expenses every year on the tail end of all of your equations in business and cut them, because you're going to add things. You have to look at the efficiencies that are involved. So as far as cutting taxes, absolutely, you would have to make a pledge to yourself that any way humanly possible you will do it. But do you give a blanket approach and say as a campaign mantra, I'm going to cut 5%? You can't do that.
Do you have specific tax proposals at this point?
Absolutely. Employment tax. If employers are employing people, they are paying for every, when you have, all of you in here know this, the 7.65% that's taken out of your payroll check, the same amount the employer matches. Well, in addition to that, they're also paying unemployment insurance, unemployment compensation, workers' compensation insurance. There's a litany of at least 4 taxes that we pay every Monday morning. We put it in an account, and it's sucked out electronically. Those have to be looked at. You want to stimulate an economy? You want to stimulate growth? You give employers a reason to hire people, and a reason to employ people, and a reason to expand. And you do it by giving them incentives that work for employing the good employees that people need to be hiring. That's how you do it. You cut the employer portion of the tax.
Bill Bryant.
Well, I think they've got it backwards. You control spending by cutting taxes. You don't feed the beast. If you read Ronald Reagan and what he said, that's exactly what he would do. He'd cut taxes so you would slow the growth of government. See, that's the only way that you do it. If there's no money, government cannot grow. So what do? You give it back to the people. That's exactly what we've done 6 times since I've been lieutenant governor. Not just talking about campaign rhetoric. No, look at my record. Look at what I've done and look what the results have been. Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to cut inventory taxes in this state. So you don't have to pay twice when you buy a piece of equipment, park it inside your own shop. We've done that twice in the Senate, died in the House. I think textbooks cost too much. I think we ought to say you get a tax credit on textbooks when you send those children out there, and they have to pay $500 for one of them. Maybe we can give you a little tax credit. I'm going to give an income tax credit to doctors going into rural areas. So we can say if you go in there, you only have to pay income taxes maybe on $65,000. So I can get that doctor into that rural area, practicing law and saving lives, and not have to complete all of those forms that are out there. So that's exactly what we need to do is cut taxes, slow the growth of government, and don't feed the beast anymore. Look at my plan, you'll see what we're doing.
Use your rebuttal. Why then, I'll go back to what we talked about earlier, why do we have a $400 million bond issue that 8% of our budget? We're talking about cutting expenses, cutting taxes, cutting all of those things, yet we continue to spend 8% more than we brought in, and just said, you said it's not a credit card fine, it's a mortgage. I don't see it's a whole lot of difference. You still got to pay it back, you've got to pay it back with interest. That's what I'm looking at is, how do you justify a $400 million extra expenditure above and beyond what you take in, yet you're trying to starve the beast? I'm having a hard time understanding that one.
Yeah, this is your last area.
Oh, I got to use my last one. All right, well, here's what you do, Dave. It's leadership. You sit down with the governor. You say, Governor, how much money do we need for economic development projects here? So he'll tell you that's exactly what we need. Then we sit down with community colleges and they say, look, the roof is leaking, we've got to have some help here. Then we sit down with our state economists and say, what do you think our bonded indebtedness ought to be? We want to build a new crime lab out there. We broke ground on that the other day. And when they sit down and say, this is the best rate you're going to get, if we're going to save money, if we're going to ever do these things, now is the time to buy a new house. Now is the time to invest in that new mortgage. Thank you.